Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Export TT's Doing Business in the United Kingdom webinar. My name is Kanika Espinosa, and I'm a research officer at Export TT. So we've been doing something called the Export Booster Initiative, and we've gotten an injection of funding from the TNT government that's allowing us to bring you programs such as the one today. So today we're going to be bringing you insights about the United Kingdom market, including an overview, sector-specific information, the business climate, logistics, and standards requirements. So before we begin, let's just go over some ground rules. Please keep your microphones muted and your cameras off. At certain points during the webinar, we will be allowing you to give us your questions and we will be answering them. If you have a question, you could use the chat box and we will relay them to the presenters. We hope you enjoyed today's session and leave knowing just a bit more about the UK market and whether or not it's right for you and your company to export. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Ms. Sheila Shah. She is from the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce in Europe. She's a consultant with them. She's a partner at a leading international accounting firm in the UK, a chartered accountant and a chartered tax advisor. Sheila specializes in taxation and has been focusing in the financial services sector for more than 16 years, advising asset management clients and businesses in UK and globally. Sheila, you can take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. I'm just going to share my screen so that you can see a little slide I've got for today's presentation. So hopefully everybody can see that.
Yes, seeing.
Perfect. So the topic I'm going to cover today, and thank you for inviting me, is the UK business climate. So the UK's economy is in a complicated spot because of Brexit and the COVID-19 crisis. But some of its key industries still find a way to be relevant and even grow under these circumstances. Initial estimates from surveys of purchasing managers suggest an acceleration of economic activity in the UK in October, which has been driven by growth in the services sector and to some lesser extent, manufacturing activity as well. So during the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to try and give you an overview of the UK market and also provide you with the ranking of the top UK industries by revenue, by employment, and the influence of Brexit, COVID-19, and the recent budget on the UK economy as a whole. So when looking at the UK's economy, we can see that it is prospering more than ever. Since the 70s, it's now reached its lowest employment rate, which on the one hand is good for UK industries. On the other hand, many industries are suffering from staff shortages. This is hampering their recovery or further growth. Recently, the UK unemployment fell from sort of 4.6% to 4.5%. And at the same time, UK job vacancies have hit a high record. So if you are looking for a job in the UK, this might be a good time to pursue your dreams. Joking aside, the labour shortages and supply disruptions for British businesses at the moment are the experience that they are now facing at the moment are likely to persist for at least a year. And the expectation is this is not going to ease until late 2022 or even 2023. And that's according to a kind of CFO survey undertaken recently with the UK's largest companies. So companies are particularly concerned about labour supply, with 3/4 reporting their businesses have experienced some significant or severe recruitment difficulties. Despite labour and supply disruptions, introducing new products or services and expanding into new markets is actually the top corporate priority. Businesses are placing more emphasis on raising capital expenditure now than at any time before. So excess demand, low interest rates, organizational change, and also energy transition, which is topical at the moment, has meant that for now, it is an attractive time to invest for UK corporates. While the climate transition is an increasingly prominent factor in corporate decision-making, this will reshape the business environment with more than 2/3 expecting significant or wholesale change in their own business over the next 10 years as a result of the move to net zero. This in itself, whilst a challenge for a business, also provides an opportunity for investors. Overall, as a result of rapid and continuous development over the years, the UK market has raised its GDP and is now one of the largest world and ranked 22nd, just looking at GDP per capita. The next area I'll cover is, well, how does the industry impact the UK economy? Being the 6th largest economy after the US, China, Japan, Germany, and India, the UK has a GDP of $2.83 trillion in 2019, with a population of around 66 million. Just to clarify, the UK does include England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. The economy is quite diverse and also therefore has a large array of key sectors. London has one of the world's top financial centre and explains why UK industries are so relevant and continue to benefit from continuous growth in spite of the current crisis. What about the industries? The major industry in the UK is actually the service sector. It's the largest in the UK according to the UK Office for National Statistics. It makes up 3/4 of the gross domestic product. And what is the service industry exactly? It's comprised of many other industries, which include finance and business services and consumer-focused industries, for example, entertainment, food, beverages, and retail. Following that is manufacturing and production, which amounts to 21% of the gross domestic product, whereas agriculture is only 0.6%. Looking at the manufacturing sector, according to the Blue Book in 2019 from the UK Office for National Statistics, it only grew 0.4% even after experiencing a growth in 2017. On the contrary, the construction output dropped by a meager 0.4% in 2018. Within the UK manufacturing sector, the food products division is the largest. It boasted a decrease in sales of 0.9 million British pounds in 2019 from 2018. And I don't have the latest statistics, but I'm sure this will have changed over the last 2 years. The service industry's growth over 2 years, and that's again since 2018, was by 2.1%. Brexit has had its influence on the matter, slowing down the overall real household consumption in the current climate. Another important sector, according to the ONS, is the tourism sector, which was making the UK earning a lot of money in 2019. Visitors in the UK spent over £28.4 billion on travel and tourism. During peak seasons, tourism grows by 9% on a yearly basis. So Visit Britain, the tourism website of the UK, shows that visitors from overseas spent £2.34 billion in 2019, which is 13% more than was the case in 2018. So why does investment in the UK sound like a good idea? And how can we compare UK industries with other European industries and economies? The UK is Europe's 3rd largest economy, and given its present rate of continuous growth, is set to become the continent's largest by 2030. But who are the major economic players in this country? It is the capital, London, where I'm based. Also boasts the highest GDP in Europe, making the UK an important centre for international investors. Having a market capitalisation over 6 trillion, the London Stock Exchange is the 3rd largest stock exchange in the world. Investing in the UK can obviously have its merits and disadvantages, if you like. Generally, investing in the UK benefits from proven stability and continued government support. As with all things, full consideration should be given to its advantages and disadvantages. Some positive attributes with respect to UK industries include plenty of blue chip stocks, shares of very large and well-recognized companies with a long history of sound financial performance are ones that are known as blue chip stocks. They're renowned for their capabilities to endure tough market conditions and have a track record demonstrating strong performance. The UK harbours many of the largest blue chip companies in the world. These include Rio Tinto to BP and also GlaxoSmithKline as an example. They reinforce stability in the region compared to other financial markets around the world. The UK is also a financial hub. As I mentioned earlier, London has one of the most advanced financial markets in the world. This has provided a stable and liquid platform for the securities market for investors looking for a wider audience rather than just the US. Some other factors that may be considered on assessing the UK market include the dependency on the service economy. Almost 3/4, around 70% of the UK's economy is made up of services. Not a rare sight for developed countries. However, the sector is typically a dynamic industry. It can see rapid growth in a short time. However, changes in consumer credit and commodity prices can also easily have an impact. The other key factor for the UK is Brexit. The UK left the EU. The impact of Brexit is fully yet to be experienced, and this may cause some instability for the UK economy in the coming years. So to move on to the UK and having made a decision to leave the European Union in 2016, formally the UK left the EU on the 31st of January 2020. Ever since, a number of non-governmental organisations and government agencies have anticipated that the lack of clarity around ongoing Brexit negotiations would have an impact on the UK industries and economies. And this is something we are seeing. The current reality is that the actual economic impact of Brexit itself is still unclear. With COVID-19 and the lockdowns since the Brexit have also had a major influence on an economic event, which has made it difficult to assess the real cause and also the real implications that are yet to arise. The Institute for Government, through numerous analyses, have found that the majority of projections are negative. They range from an 18% loss to a 7% gain of economic output as a result of Brexit. And recently, actually, the Office of Budget Responsibility have stated that we assume that leaving the EU would reduce long-run GDP by around 4%. But with the effect of the pandemic, they now consider that it's going to reduce by a further 2%. Research done by a pro-EU and anti-Brexit facility, the Centre for European Reform, has concluded that the cost of leaving the EU for the UK's public finances will amount to £17 billion starting from September. There are a number of areas that were affected according to the UK's Office for Budget Responsibility, a government agency following the Brexit negotiations. Business investments and the prospect of reduced access to foreign markets are included. Some of the impact has been evidenced by movements in the exchange rate, having a knock-on impact on raising inflation and reducing consumer income. And this again, in turn, may contribute to lower economic growth. And then recently, so last week only, we had our budget, which was one of the most consequential of recent decades. The small state, low tax approach, which previous governments have taken, have actually gone into reverse. Interestingly, it is a policy choice by this government. It's not something that the government has been forced to do by the demands of the pandemic. So the government has made a decision to opt for a bigger state-funded budget by raising taxes as a part of the share of the GDP to the highest levels since post-war Attlee government. While Mr. Sunak expressed an ambition in time to reduce taxes and the size of the state, the budget certainly currently demonstrated that for now, his priorities lie in the opposite direction. So big tax increases in the March budget, coupled with the better than expected growth since, then handed the Chancellor with a significant windfall. But rather than using the higher revenues to cut taxes, Mr. Sunak chose to fund further and to uplift spending in the health sector. So neoliberalism seems to be giving way to a neo-statism, and that aims to reduce income inequality, raise wages, and invest in new infrastructure, the climate transition, and also left behind regions. The long-running commitment to reducing public borrowing remains, but rather than spending cuts doing the hard work, as they did after the financial crisis, taxes themselves will take the strain. The main tax rises are squarely targeted at high earners and corporates. Increasing the minimum wage and universal credit will bolster the incomes for the low earners. So the surge in spending on health and social care that is now underway represents a historic expansion in the size and shape of the UK state. All in all, the UK has and is likely to continue to demonstrate resilience and growth. I've talked about some challenges of businesses in recent months, which in turn may be seen as opportunities for others. There are also some waves to be ridden following Brexit and the fiscal and state welfare pressures the UK government is facing following the pandemic. That said, having kept our borders open during the worst periods of the pandemic, then introducing lockdowns and hard border controls, we have now finally opened the doors to the outside world. The so-called red list has been abandoned entirely for now, at least. A return of risk appetite to the boardroom, as boosted by vaccine rollouts and strong growth over the summer, has led to a surge in global mergers and acquisitions activity. Around 4 trillion of deals have been announced since the start of the year, putting 2021 on track to break the previous record set shortly before the financial crisis, having a positive impact in the UK being a key financial hub. So a number of factors operate to support M&A activity in the UK. A significant private equity industry, the large number of multinationals based here, liberal takeover laws, and liquid capital markets. Inward M&A has been boosted by the UK's fast vaccination drive and strong growth. Relatively cheap equity valuations means the price ratio of the FTSE 100 is well below US and European levels. And the weak pound make the UK assets attractive to overseas buyers. A Refinitiv report that reports that the number of UK buyouts in the first half of this year was 60% higher than in the same period in 2019, while across the EU, it has risen just by 14%. Well, I hope that gives you a bit of a flavour of the current climate, business climate in the UK. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for joining us and for that really comprehensive presentation. So Michelle can't stay with us for the entire time, so I'm going to just give a couple minutes to anyone who has a specific question for her. You could just leave it in the chat and we'll relay it. All right. Well, it doesn't seem that anyone has any questions. So just to thank you again, Michelle, for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right. Bye. Okay, so next up we have Mr. Reagan Stroud. Ooh, I'm actually now seeing a question. Sheila, are you still with us? I'm seeing how can a beauty care product enter the UK markets?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm not the expert on the beauty care side, but certainly probably a more difficult area of the market based on my understanding, just because I guess the competitiveness there, particularly across the EU, is fairly high. So for the UK at the moment, I think, you know, given the service industry and particularly the food industry being a very high growth rate, that is probably the area that would bear most success. So I think on the beauty side, it would be a bit more competitive and difficult.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So Mr. Stroud is going to go a little bit more into the different sectors and the potential there. So I think some of the questions we're getting will be answered in the next presentation. So thank you, Sheilan.
Super, thank you very much.
All right. Okay, so we have Reagan Stroud. He is a research officer here with us at Export TT, and he's been working really hard over the last few weeks, really, to bring together this information for you. So we're excited to share with you everything that we have, and you could take it away, Reagan.
Hi, good morning again, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Like Kanika said, I have a presentation on the United Kingdom. So 1 second, let me just pull it up. Okay, great. So this presentation is geared towards to give you all a better idea on whether you deem the United Kingdom an attractive market for yourself. How I intend to break down this information is that it's divided into 4 main areas. First, we'll start by giving a very brief overview of the UK. Then we'll take a more in-depth look into some of the industries and how they performed over the past couple of years, as well as some projections for the future. Then we'll take a very quick look at some of the distribution channels, and then we'll wrap up by taking a look at the UK post-Brexit and are there any laws or any changes regarding shipment to that region now. So it's a lot of information. So if you miss anything, not to worry, you will receive the presentation after, so you could always go through it after if you ever miss any figures or anything that was displayed. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So the UK, now this is a small island nation that's located on the northwestern side of Europe and is separated from the mainland and its nearest mainland partner, France, by what is known as the English Channel. Now, as Ms. Shah hinted to before, the UK is made up of 4 countries. Starting from the top left, we have Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and England. Each of them have their own respective population sizes, as well as their own governing political party systems. So a note going forward is that through this presentation, although the countries have their own governing political systems, they are still ruled under the same monarchy, being Queen Elizabeth II. They all utilize the same currency, being the Great British Pound, as well as they all have mostly the same entry requirements for both goods and people. So for just those reasons, we'll be discussing the UK as a whole going forward. So just one thing to keep in note is that the UK's Caribbean diaspora. Now, this information is courtesy of a June 2020 report from the UK's Office of National Statistics. It found that on average, there are about 209,000 Caribbean inhabitants that currently reside in the UK, of which the vast majority of them, being at 119,000, are of Jamaican origin, with the second most at 23,000 are of Trinidadian origin. We see that the majority of these Caribbean inhabitants reside in England at 203,000. And of that 203,000 that live in England, 109,000 are centered around London. You could say about 54% live in the London area. So when it comes to TNT's performance in the UK so far, when we compare the leftmost graph, then to say TNT's total exports to the rightmost graph here on the screen, TNT's non-energy exports, We can see that our non-energy exports are just a small fraction of our overall exports to the UK. What's positive to note, however, is that our non-energy exports have been steadily increasing over the past 3 years, even when our overall exports took a dip back in 2019. When we look at a breakdown of our non-energy exports, however, we can see that the majority of it is made up of miscellaneous edible preparations, or HS21. This is followed by beverages, HS22, paper and paperboard products, HS48, and so on. Those will make up our main products to the UK. So like I said, it was a very brief overview. We'll now take a more in-depth look into some of the industries and how they perform. Now, within this presentation, we focused on the following industries, being alcoholic drinks, breakfast cereals, sugar confectionaries, rice, pasta, noodles, sausage, dressings, and condiments, soft drinks, home care items, tissue and hygiene products, as well as sweet biscuit, snack bars, and fruit snacks. There is also information at the end which pertains to industries that are not included here. So it would always give you a breakdown of how things are looking in the UK as well. So looking at the market for alcoholic drinks, it should be said that the introduction of COVID-19 caused a major change in how alcoholic drinks was being consumed in the UK. In a nutshell, all on-trade sites of consumption were closed, for example, bars, nightclubs, etc. These mass closures, however, boosted off-trade sales, as consumers were forced to purchase alcohol from supermarkets and other establishments that were deemed to be essential retailers. It is worth noting, however, that unfortunately this added off-trade consumption was not enough to offset the decline experienced in the on-trade. As a result, the industry as a whole saw a value and volume decrease of around 10% and 18% respectively, when comparing 2019 to 2020 figures. Another interesting point to note is that over this time, all categories of alcohol performed poorly. For example, spirits, beers, wines, etc., except the ready-to-drink category, which actually saw growth over this time. Now, the ready-to-drink category, also referred to as the RTD sector within alcoholic drinks, are essentially single-use beverages, typically cocktails, that are packaged ready for immediate consumption. So in the UK, we saw that the top 5 performing alcoholic RTDs for 2020 were WKD Blue, Gordon's Pink Gin and Tonic, Jack Daniels and Coke, Smirnoff Ice, and Gordon's Green Gin and Tonic. So thankfully, as a result of the COVID-19 restrictions being eased within the UK currently, this sector is expected to rebound quite strongly. Value and volume sales are expected to reach pre-pandemic levels again by about 2023 and 2024 respectively. It's expected that beer and spirit sales would be the main drivers behind volume growth, whereas value growth is expected to be mainly driven by beer sales. So looking forward in the market for alcoholic drinks, some trends to note would be that one, given that on-trade and off-trade sales are loosely negatively correlated, it's expected that on-trade sites of consumption continue to open up, off-trade sales would begin to slow as a result. However, it's noted that off-trade sales will remain in good shape when comparing pre-pandemic figures. Now remember, off-trade is like with supermarkets and other retailers, and on-trade would be like nightclubs and bars and stuff like that. Our next point to note is that as consumers were stuck at home, it was noted that a growing shift towards them wanting to try something new grew then to say, which led many of them to start mixing their own cocktails at home. As a result, we saw continued growth in the RTD sector, even with the reopening of on-trade sites. Number 3, currently in the UK, it was noted that a shift towards health and wellness amongst UK citizens has had an impact on the alcoholic industry. As such, we see that consumers are now shifting to drinks with much lower or even zero alcohol levels in the beer and spirits category. This is in line with the NHS's drive to reduce alcohol consumption, where they have a weekly recommended limit on the amount of alcohol a person should intake, and that being around 14 units. Now, just for educational purposes, A unit is calculated by the alcohol volume multiplied by the size of the drink in milliliters, and then dividing that whole thing by 1,000. So number 4, it's interesting to note that in addition to a shift towards the health and wellness, we see that although people are drinking less, they are starting to drink alcohols with a higher perceived quality density. So in other words, consumers are drinking less, but drinking of better quality. We can see this especially in the spirits category, where although volume sales are only forecasted to increase by about 5% between now and 2025, value sales are expected to increase by about 33%. And number 5, it's worth noting that the sustainability trend also impacted the packaging of alcoholic drinks as consumers become more conscious of shift towards like green packaging and stuff. We see companies such as Heineken adopting other more eco-friendly packaging and stuff of their beers and stuff. So quickly moving over to the market for breakfast cereals. Now, in a nutshell, the breakfast cereals industry has been experiencing increases over the past couple of years, especially in 2020, where the breakfast cereal industry recorded a 4% increase in volume terms, reaching about 552,000 tons being shifted, as well as a 5% increase in retail value terms for the industry to now be worth about £2 billion. This was mainly due as a result of more people being at home and were actually able to have breakfast, where before they would tend to skip this meal altogether. When observing the respective categories which make up the market for breakfast cereals, it was noted that muesli and granolas, along with hot cereals, had the strongest retail growth in terms of volume and value sales for 2020. So when comparing these various categories which make up the industry for breakfast cereals, we see that from the top row, that in 2020, mueslis, granolas, along with hot cereals, made up about 30 and 31% of the overall volume and value sales respectively. From the bottom row, this category is projected to grow to a combined 33 and 35% by 2025. Nevertheless, the overall volume and value sales for cereals are expected to remain quite high and overall to remain higher than the pre-pandemic figures before. So some points to note in this industry going forward would be 1, the on-to-go market for consumer categories represents a major opportunity for manufacturers of breakfast cereals, as now people in the UK would be going back to their average life than to say their busy lifestyle. We see companies such as Nestle introducing what's known as their on-to-go range, which include their cereal along with some shelf-stable milk, along with a spoon ready for just grab and go then to say. Another important point to note is that in terms of distribution, combined private label sales are very, very large, representing about 28% of the overall sales of this commodity in 2020. When comparing this to the largest branded distributor, being Kellogg's at 24%. So we see combined private label sales outperforming the branded competitors. So looking at the industry for sugar confectionaries. Now, this industry in the UK must be noted that it contains some challenges as well as some opportunities for growth in some niche categories. The reason for this, again, is down to UK residents trying to focus on living a more healthy lifestyle than to say. As a result, total volume sales are expected to decline by about 2% in 2026 when compared against 2021 figures. This in addition to total value sales, which are expected to decline by about 4% during the same time period. All in all, this equates to a negative compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of about -0.4 and -0.8 per year, respectively. Nevertheless, as stated before, there are some niche categories within this industry that are tending to perform well. One of which being that products that contain low to no sugar, but instead use artificial sweeteners are on the rise. An example of this would be the company Profit Van Mel, which relatively recently launched a sugar-free version of their famous Chupa Chups candy. In addition to a shift to less sugar, it was noted that companies can benefit from catering their products to more religious specifications, as well as relatively new emerging trends such as veganism. As a result, it was noted that brands that offer gluten-free products are tending to be on the rise. Lastly, it was noted that sharing bags, like bulk bags and stuff, would tend to outperform singular sale in the UK right now for mainly two reasons. One of which being due to the fact that as more consumers were stuck at home for the lockdown, sharing bags represented better value for consumers over singular sale. Another point to note is that the UK government right now is planning to introduce what is known as their Anti-Obesity Strategy in April of 2022. We will discuss this more later on in this presentation. However, just note currently that this strategy will have a negative impact on singular sale, as it would restrict where in the store these goods can be placed and promoted and stuff. So just to keep that in mind for now. So looking at the industry for rice, pastas, and noodles. Now within this industry, there was massive growth for the year 2020, which in truth was largely brought about due to panic buying. In addition, when taking into account that a lot more people were now at home, cooking led the pandemic. Everybody was cooking now because nobody could buy food. This led to this industry realizing growth in the region of around 16% for volume sales, as well as 15% with regards to value sales. Overall, this industry as a whole is expected to keep expanding well into 2025. However, notably at a continuing slowing rate, than to say. Okay, so with regards to each individual category, it must be said that rice has remained the largest category in terms of volume sales for 2020 and has seen the second highest growth after dried pastas. It should be noted that the health trend has also impacted this category, with some products adding whole grains and quinoas to their product ranges. Nevertheless, this category of rice will continue to grow, posting the second highest volume and value compound annual growth rates for the forecasted period here. Pasta actually posted the highest volume growth and second highest value growth of all the categories in 2020, recording figures of around 18 and 17% respectively. This category is expected to be the driving force behind this industry as a whole well into 2025. This recording compound annual growth figures of around 6.4% and 5.7% in terms of volume and value sales, well, respectively. It should also be noted that within this category, many consumers were viewed to be switching from chilled to dried pastas. Reason for which being that amongst consumers, dried pastas are viewed as being of similar quality, having a longer shelf life and cheaper. So for them, it makes no sense for them to be paying more money for a very similar product. So noodles were actually the smallest category of the three. However, this category is still projected to expand between now and 2025. Figures suggest a growth rate in the region of about 0.5% and 1.8% per year for volume and value sales, respectively. Among the subcategories for noodles, instant noodles has remained the largest, notably mainly down to their convenience. It was also mentioned that going forward, noodle manufacturers have notably tapped into the ongoing health trend, introducing new products that are low in carbohydrates and high in protein, aimed at more health-conscious gym goers and stuff like that. So a point to note in this industry is that value share of private labels has increased over the past 2 years. This was mainly brought about due to the fact that some consumers have lost their jobs or have seen a fall in their disposable income, which resulted in them turning to more budget-friendly options. In addition, some brands were out of stock during the panic buying periods of the pandemic, which led consumers turning to private labels because they would rather have something than go without, than to say. It should be stated, however, that these private labels are massive. And to be honest, are brands in their own respect. We can see this in 2020, where combined private label sales accounted for 46% of total value sales in the whole industry, with Tesco being the largest individual private label at about 7.4%. For comparison, during the same year, the largest branded player was Mars Foods UK, controlling about 11% market share. Now, as we're on the topic of private labels, I kind of just wanted to take a second to speak about private labels in general and not just with regards to this industry. Essentially, private labels' presence in the UK has been increasing steadily over the past 10 years with regards to packaged foods. As a quote from the BBC would put it, rather than just being a row of budget beans huddled under the bottom shelf, private labels are now often heavily promoted and are carefully targeted at a range of different shoppers, budgets, and market segments. The thing is, they typically do this by branding their private labels under different names with the name of the actual establishment in small print somewhere on the packaging, some of which are aimed at competing directly against more premium brands. For example, we could see here that Asda's Cocoa Snaps can go directly against Kellogg's Cocoa Pops, or J. Sandberry's Ritz potato chips coming up directly against Lay's. So moving over now to the industry of sauces, dressings, and condiments. Now, this industry in 2020 recorded a 6% increase in volume sales over 2019 figures, with the industry reaching about 603,000 tons being shifted. Whereas in value sales, it recorded a 7% increase, pushing the industry to reach a value of around £3.3 billion. The CAGR for this industry between now and 2025 is expected to be about 0.7 in terms of volume and 1.8 in terms of value, meaning that in 2025, this industry is expected to be about 3.6% bigger in volume terms and 9.2% larger in value terms over 2020 figures. Now, points to note in this industry going forward would be: one, products for easy meal preparation are popular. For example, cooking sauces and pasta sauces. However, it was noted that going forward, consumers' demands has been mainly oriented to products with more longer shelf life and more cheaper. They tend to look for more cheaper options than to say. So that is something to keep in mind. Another point to note in this industry is that chili sauces are on the rise, as it was noted that consumers are turning to these sauces to give their food a little extra spice. So that is kind of good news for us because we love pepper, so we could export pepper as well. Pepper sauce, I should say. Number three, consumers value innovation in this industry. It was noted that consumers within this industry are not just interested in another sauce in the jar, but creative packaging can go a long way. Example of this, we see like one company, I think it was Kraft, introducing salad sprays instead of just being in a normal bottle just to throw over your salad and stuff. So it's something to keep in mind. And number four, it was noted that UK consumers increasingly want to experience new flavors, something different and not from the region. I think the examples we saw that flavors from Asia are tending to do well. And this is where we actually identified that Caribbean flavors, now is the time to enter the market and to say, because the consumer is looking for something different. So quickly moving over to the industry for soft drinks. It must be noted that the retail of soft drinks in the UK has been overall positively impacted by the emergence of the pandemic. This as a result of a significant change from on-trade distribution to off-trade. The best performing soft drinks throughout the off-trade in 2020 included concentrates, carbonates, carbonated RTDs and kubachas, as well as RTD coffees. These soft drinks mainly benefited from their indulgence aspect, natural energy qualities, and health benefit perceptions. The worst performing soft drinks were energy drinks and sports drinks because of their reduced on-the-go consumption, because people were stuck at home. The most improved category was bottled waters, which was on the decline, but saw an uptick over the pandemic period. Again, we believe this is down to the UK consumer choosing a more healthy lifestyle now. And juices overall experienced relatively flat sales because on one hand, juices with high sugar content tend to perform poorly, and then all natural juices tended to see an increase, so they kind of cancel each other out. So the industry, well, that category overall relatively performed flat. So it must be said that when looking at the packaging material for soft drinks, consumers tend to go to the larger packaging, the larger container sizes over the smaller container sizes. Because of the pandemic and more consumers wanted, it represented better value than to say. And lastly, PTE plastic bottles remain the main go-to packaging type for manufacturers, as consumers for the most part disregarded the sustainability trend in favor of stockpiling. However, we predict that this is subject to change soon with the introduction of the UK's plastic packaging tax. However, we'll get into more on this a little later on. So looking forward, on-trade sales aren't expected to reach pre-pandemic levels again before 2023. This, however, isn't expected to impact off-trade sales much, as between 2020 to 2025, it's expected that volume and value sales will grow at a CAGR of around 2.8 and 5% respectively. For comparison, the off-trade volume and value CAGRs between 2015 was 2.4 and 3% respectively. So for the next 5 years, it would actually outperform the last 5 years. So looking forward again, the top 3 best performing categories between 2020 to 2025 is expected to be RTD coffees, RTD teas, and carbonates. Now, please note that the picture depicted here is just to represent the market as a whole and does not represent the specific brand. So, for example, the average market value of RTD coffees between 2020 to 2025 is expected to be about 246 million and is expected to grow by about 132% over this time. The average, the average market value of RTD teas expected to be about 135 million, expected to grow about 123% over this time. And carbonates are expected to be about 4.8 billion and is expected to grow by about 43.6% over this time. So, sorry about it. Yeah, just looking at the largest category, however, carbonates are expected to be the largest, followed by juices, bottled waters, energy drinks, and then energy drinks last. With, again, the average market value of carbonates are expected to be about 4.8 billion, sorry, are expected to grow about 43.6%. Average market value for juices expected to be 2.7 billion, growing at around 11.8%. Bottled water, average market value 2.4 billion, growing at 17.8%. And energy drinks, 1.455 billion, growing at 17.3% over this time. So trends to note looking forward would again be the health movement, where sugar contents would become a major concern. So there's some just to keep in mind where more reduced sugars and artificial sweeteners would, we predict would do better. as well as price would be a major concern now for consumers as they become more price sensitive over this time. So looking at the market for home care items, unsurprisingly, with the emergence of the pandemic, this sector did very well. More specifically, surface care, bleach, dishwashing, and toilet care saw the highest spike in demand in 2020, driving the positive performance of the home care industry overall. Categories such as laundry care witnessed several contrary impacts on its performance, leading to relatively flat sales in 2020. And the worst performing category were those that were not related or hardly related towards cleaning and stuff like that, such as like air care, insecticides, and polishes. Looking forward, it's important to recognize that panic buying and stockpiling were the main factors influencing purchasing patterns over the past year. If this current trend is upheld, it's assumed that consumers' purchasing patterns will normalize and hoarded stocks will deplete, leading to a dip in 2021. However, this dip is expected to be short-lived as consumers' purchasing are expected to pick back up once again after their depleted stocks has been used up. Okay, so trends to note looking forward would be pricing. In the early stages of the pandemic, consumers cared very little about price. However, it's expected that as things normalize, consumers would become more price sensitive. And two, again, over the initial stages of the pandemic, very little regard was given to whether a product was deemed to be all natural. However, as time goes on, it's expected that consumers will become more conscious of this and tend to favor more products that are deemed green or environmentally friendly. So moving over to tissue and hygiene products, much like the previous category for home care, this industry saw, it actually did well over the past year, with panic buying mainly driving sales back in 2020. It must be said that all categories under this industry saw an improvement over 2019 to varying degrees, with toilet paper actually seeing the most growth out of all the products in this category. So looking forward, retail tissues are expected to decline slightly in 2021. However, sales levels still expected to remain above 2019 figures. Additionally, these levels are expected to remain high as a result of people continuing to work from home more than before, as well as the fact that it's expected that consumers will maintain a higher level of cleaning overall. Conversely, this category of sanitary protection is expected to face some challenges as consumers switch to more contraceptives and more reusable products, as well as the category for nappies, diapers, and pants is predicted to encounter some challenges due to the declining birth rate right now in the UK. So looking at sweet biscuits, snack bars, and food stocks, surprisingly, this industry was one of the few industries to be hardly affected by the health shift amongst UK consumers. It was determined that UK consumers generally possess a fondness for this industry and relied heavily on it as comfort food during the lockdown period. This is reflected in the value of the industry, which as of 2021 stands at about £3.4 billion, with approximately 568,000 tons being shifted. This represented 2% value and 1.2% volume growth over 2020 figures. It's noteworthy to state, however, that although all categories under this sector performed relatively well, growth was mainly driven by dried fruit snacks, which experienced a 6% volume growth and 7% value growth over 2020 figures. This was thought to be due to the fact that consumers again favored more healthier snacks over more sugary, dense ones, as well as the fact that dried fruits is typically used as a major ingredient in baking, which was another activity alongside cooking that saw a major uptake during the lockdown period. So looking forward in this industry, we can see that the CAGRs for both volume and value are expected to grow well into 2026, with volume growing at about 0.8% per year, with value growing at about 2.4% per year. So looking forward, the top 3 best performing categories between now and 2026 are expected to be protein and energy bars, dried fruit, and fruit and nut bars. Again, the pictures depicted here does not represent the specific good, but the industry as a whole. So the average market value for protein and energy bars is expected to be 411 million and is to grow about 57% over this time. Same thing, dried fruit snacks, average market value 299 million, growing at about 22% over this time. And average market value for fruit and nut bars, 173 million, growing at 14.6% over this time. So looking at the top 3 worst performing categories between now and 2026 over this in this industry, we see wafers are expected to decline by about 7.3% and having an average market value of around 53 million over this time. Cereal bars having an average market value of around 331 million, but declining by about 4.3%. And the market for plain biscuits having an average market value of around 535 million, but only increasing by around 0.5% over that time. So some points to note in this category would again be the health trends, which were more healthy options such as protein bars and dried fruit snacks, etc., would tend to do well, as well as the fact that shared packaging would also tend to outperform singular sales in the long run, again, due to the same reasons for the sugar confectionaries, down to the anti-obesity strategy. So with that being said, let's move quickly over to some of the distribution channels and take a look at how they performed over the past couple of years. So with regards to supermarkets, we saw that in 2020, this category was one of the strongest performing categories within the grocery retail sector. This as the sector overall experienced value growth of around 8%, with the sector as a whole earning profits in the region of around 37 billion pounds. Of all the supermarket chains throughout the UK, we saw that Tesco was the company with the most market share at 20%. With regards to hypermarkets, now these would be described as a retail store that combines a department store with a grocery supermarket. A local example would be like Food Basket. It should be noted that the stockpiling trend is what drove sales in this sector, with value sales overall expanding by about 3%, with the sector as a whole reaching total earnings of around 67 billion. Tesco again was the company with the most market share in this category at 37%. Traditional groceries also saw an uptick in sales, particularly due to more alcoholic drink sales, with the sector seeing a 2% value growth in 2020, reaching about 19 billion pounds. Holland and Brat Retail Limited was the leading grocery in this category, with approximately 3% market share. And with regards to convenience stores, they saw strong growth due to the fact that more consumers were now shopping within their districts, fearing to go out to like the larger supermarkets, the larger retailers and stuff. As a result, this sector actually saw a 9% increase in value growth, with the sector overall reaching about earnings of around 40 billion pounds. Tesco, again, was the leader in this category with about 19% value share. And with regards to the e-commerce space, they saw massive growth due to the lockdown mandates brought about from the pandemic, with value growth in this sector expanding by about 30%, seeing the market reach an estimated value of about 92 billion pounds. It was noted that Amazon was the leading company in this space with approximately 24% value share in 2020. So if you think about entering the UK and on the online space, it's best to try to get your goods on Amazon than to offer it on Amazon. Another takeaway point would be that if you're going in with brick and mortar, the best performing brick and mortar store in the UK was Tesco. So there's something to keep in mind when positioning your products on entry. So let's take a quick look at the UK post-Brexit to see if anything has changed with regards to shipment to that region. Now, an important question you might have is that has the importation process changed with UK since Brexit? Thankfully, the answer to that would be no, due to the CARIFORM UK Economic Partnership Agreement. Essentially, this agreement eliminates all tariffs on goods imported from signing CARIFORM member states, of which TNT is one of them. I wouldn't get too much into it now because we actually have another guest speaker who would break this down and explain it more in depth. Now, some documents required to go to the UK, again, would be fairly typical. You would need your commercial invoice, your bill of lading, packing list, insurance documents. Sometimes required special certificates of origin, which in this case you would need, and a trade license. However, none of the products listed here you need any licenses for. Those licenses are just for like real or the products then to say, but nothing listed here. Another point to note is that it's advised that a copy of the commercial invoice is sent along with the goods to avoid any custom delays on clearances or anything like that. Now, as stated before, generally there are no import licenses is required for goods to enter the UK. Some restricted goods, however, may include, like I said before, odd products like anti-personnel mines, torture equipment, firearms, controlled drugs, rough diamonds. Those kind of stuff is what required licenses. If you would like a full breakdown, a full list of the products that require licenses, we have the link attached here, so you can feel free to visit it after. So looking at the EORI number requirement now. Now, with regards to the EORI number, this stands for the Economic Operations Registration and Identification Number. This essentially is a unique ID code to use to track all customs interactions. Now, it's important that the person shipping your goods and who's actually interacting with customs needs to have an EORI number. No EORI number can result in delays and custom clearances, in addition to added costs, since, again, this number is required for all interactions. So without this number, goods essentially cannot be cleared. Last point to note is that when applying for the EORI number, ensure that the person has the correct one. This, as different countries throughout Europe and even within the UK carry different numbers. An example within the UK would be the fact that, well, Great Britain, being England, Scotland, and Wales, carry an EORI number starting with GB, whereas Northern Ireland carries an EORI number starting with XI. You must have a GB EORI number before you can apply for the ones from Northern Ireland. We've also attached the link here, so you could also feel free to read it up and see more about it as well as to apply for it. Now, with regards to labeling standards, in the UK, the following information is generally required to be displayed on the packaging of the item. We have the location of origin, the weight and dimensions, the chemical composition, as well as appropriate hazards. As we could see, if we follow the arrows, we could see the green arrow pointing to the location of origin, the purple arrow pointing towards the chemical composition, and we have two appropriate hazard warning labels on the product here. Now, the only thing we don't see here would be the weight and dimension, but that's just because of this example. Sometimes products tend to put that on the front, where we could see from this cereal packaging here, they normally put it at the bottom. With regards to some products, however, additional labeling standards are required. For example, an alcohol warning label is required for products that have an alcohol content above 1.2%. A genetically modified ingredients warning label is required for products that use genetically modified ingredients, as well as the words packaged in a protective atmosphere must be displayed on goods that use packing gas. So regarding the laws and regulations that control food items in the UK, the general theme is that all food imports must meet the same hygiene standards as if it was produced in the UK. Now, this is a quite extensive list and we wouldn't have time to go through it. But luckily for us, this website here has all the food standards, all the food requirements that are listed here. Feel free to go on it. Like I said, all the categories that was here, as well as other categories that are not listed in this presentation as well. So it's a useful website. For home care items listed, some categories may be deemed as about dangerous chemicals, for example, bleach and detergents. As a result, these would be subject to an amended version of the EU detergents regulations, referred to as the Detergents Amendment EU Exit Regulations of 2019. Now, these regulations basically include things like safety caps and hazard warnings and stuff like that. Again, it's quite extensive. So if you're interested, you can feel free to visit the links and read up more on this legislation. Now, just to touch on a couple of laws that we mentioned earlier, with regards to the anti-obesity strategy. Now, in a nutshell, this is essentially the government recognizing that obesity is becoming a huge problem in the UK and implementing strategies aimed at reducing it. So, for example, foods that are high in sugars, fats, and salts would have restrictions on where they can be promoted. One example would be by stopping buy one, get one free promotions, as well as restrictions on where these goods can be placed. For example, they are stopping these goods being placed close to the checkout aisle to reduce what they call impulse buying. There are also restrictions on other categories of goods as well, such as alcohols, which will now be obligated to have their calorie content displayed on the beverages. Now, by no means this is an extensive list, by no means is an exhaustive list, I should say, but it's just to make you aware of what is taking place in the UK. And this strategy, again, is expected to come into effect in April of 2022. So it's just something to keep in mind, as well as to look up to see if you want to know more about it. As well as lastly, we mentioned the plastic packaging tax. Now, the name of this tax speaks for itself. It essentially serves as an incentive for manufacturers to move to more eco-friendly packaging materials. This tax will apply to plastic packaging manufactured in or imported into the UK. It will not apply to any plastic packaging which contains more than 30% of recycled plastics, or any packaging which is not predominantly plastic by weight. Imported plastic packaging will be liable to the tax, whether it's either filled or unfilled. As well as the rate of this tax is set to be around £200 per metric ton of plastic, and is set to come in when April of 2022. So just to take a quick recap, throughout this presentation, we've covered and addressed, look at a brief overview of the UK. We took a more in-depth look into some of the product categories, as well as we take a look at some of the distribution channels and how they perform. So at this time, I would like to say thank you all for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and I'll hand it back over to Kanika.
Sure. All right, thank you very much, Reagan, for that presentation. It was really well done, very comprehensive, and I think everybody learned a little bit more about the UK markets. So next up, we're going to have Ms. Nikita Gosain. She's from the Ministry of Trade, and she's going to be sharing with us today on the CARI Forum UK EPA. All right, thanks, Nikita.
Thank you so much, Kanika. And it's a pleasure to be here with everyone this morning. Following from the very comprehensive and insightful presentation by my colleague, Mr. Stroud, I will be presenting on the CARI Forum UK Economic Partnership Agreement, which serves as a useful tool to accessing the UK market of approximately 65 million people. So I'm going to share my screen. Great. So let me begin by giving you a brief overview of the contents of my presentation. Firstly, we're going to talk about what is the CARIFORUM UK EPA, the objectives of the agreement, the scope of the agreement, and the trade disciplines covered. Then we will delve into the products that qualify for preferential treatment. Afterwards, I will provide a brief overview of Trinidad and Tobago's trade with the UK and outline products that have export potential into that market. And finally, I will provide some information on how trade issues under the CARIFORUM UK agreement can be treated, and of course, where you can find a copy of the agreement for your own browsing. So the agreement is quite a comprehensive one, but for the purposes of this session, my presentation will focus on trade in goods. So let's get into it. What is the CARIFORUM UK EPA? As I mentioned, the CARIFORUM UK EPA is a very comprehensive trading relationship between CARIFORUM and the UK. As most of you are already aware, the UK in January 2017 announced its decision to exit the European Union, giving rise to the term Brexit, which was covered earlier. So this action meant that all the trade agreements to which the UK was party as a member of the EU would be null and void. So of course, this would have implications for CARIFORUM. So what does this mean? This meant that the preferential access CARIFORUM enjoyed under the UK market under the existing economic partnership agreement with the EU would cease to exist. So CARIFORUM member states actually decided to negotiate a new agreement with the UK that would preserve and maintain the access it has been enjoying in the market since 2008. As such, the agreement was negotiated over the period January 2018 to March 2019 by officials of CARIFORUM and the UK, and it was signed by Trinidad and Tobago on April 1st, 2019. Now, what is important to note here is that the agreement is essentially a rollover or replica of the CARIFORUM EU EPA. So for those of you who are familiar with the CARIFORUM EU EPA, you will be happy to know that the CARIFORUM UK EPA is just a replica. So once you have an understanding of the CARIFORUM EU EPA, you'll have an understanding of the CARIFORUM UK EPA. Now we move on to the objectives of the CARIFORUM UK EPA. So this slide highlights some of the objectives which also serve as the benefit. Some of these include assisting in poverty reduction and eradication, promote regional integration and economic cooperation, promote the gradual integration of CARIFORUM into the global economy, improve the region's capacity in trade policy and trade-related issues. Now we recognize that these particular objectives can seem quite ambitious, as there are a lot of factors that contribute to each of these. But particularly for the Ministry of Trade and Industry, we are focused on facilitating increased investment, facilitating increased competitiveness, and promoting economic growth, all of which can be done through the agreement. So what are the disciplines that are covered under the agreement? So the CARIFORUM UK EPA, as I mentioned, is a comprehensive trade agreement, and it covers areas such as goods, services, investment, e-commerce, and trade-related issues. And under trade-related issues, we have procurement, competition, investment, and the environment. And as I mentioned, I will be covering trade in goods, which is highlighted in red here. So this chart provides a breakdown of the various parts of the agreement, which covers 248 articles. And this chart can basically provide you with a useful guide when you are perusing the agreement so that you can focus on any particular areas that are necessary. The section highlighted in blue is the Title 1 under Part 2 of the agreement, which is Trade in Goods, and it sets out from Articles 9 to Article 59 of the agreement. I would also like to highlight the institutional provisions under Part 5, which I will touch on later on in my presentation. The institutional provisions cover important bodies for you to note when it comes to reporting challenges faced under the agreement. Just to take a deeper look into trade in goods, this section highlighted in blue contains provisions for customs duties, trade defense instruments, non-tariff measures, customs and trade facilitation, agriculture and fisheries, technical barriers to trade, and sanitary and phytosanitary measures. The other areas that are highlighted in green are also related to trade, which you would also have access to through the agreement to peruse. So as it relates to customs duties, which I'm sure everyone here would be interested in, this table provides information on the treatment accorded to the goods covered under the agreement. So first, let's look at the exports from CARIFORUM and by extension, Trinidad and Tobago. So as outlined in Annex 2, which covers customs duties on products originating in CARIFORUM states, all of the products originating from CARIFORUM and Trinidad, including Trinidad and Tobago, can enter the UK market duty-free and quota-free, with the exception of arms and ammunition, which is covered under Chapter 93 of the Customs Act. So this means that anything that each of your company produces can enter the UK market duty-free and quota-free. So the access you have to the UK is therefore quite substantial, as it opens up the market of over 65 million persons. I would also like to mention at this point that for your product to qualify for this duty-free and quota-free treatment, it must meet the rules of origin set out for the particular product outlined in Annex 2 of Protocol 1 to the agreement. Now, these rules set out the criteria that need to be met for a product from a third country, from a product to be considered a Trinidad and Tobago product. So this means that you won't be able to import a product from an external country and then simply re-export it to the UK and expect to pay the new duties or be subject to zero duties. So the certifying authority for certificates of origin under the agreement is the Customs and Excise Division, and they would be able to provide more information on the specific rules for each of your specific products. So moving on to imports from the UK market, Appendix 1 to Annex 3 of the agreement sets out the schedule for tariff liberalization for goods imported from the UK into CARIFORUM states. The agreement takes into account the different levels of development between the UK and CARIFORUM member states. Therefore, in order to protect CARIFORUMs, including Trinidad and Tobago, in order to protect our domestic manufacturers and burgeoning industries, the agreement ensures that the preferences granted to the UK by CARIFORUM are not as substantial as those accorded to us by the UK. So the CARIFORUM goods entering the UK market are not subjected to quotas and duties, while the UK's goods entering CARIFORUM are subject to a phased reduction over time. So in addition to this, there are some products that are sensitive for some member states and were therefore excluded from the agreement altogether. Now, the majority of the products have a phased reduction of duties over time, with full duty-free treatment by 2023. So examples of some products I've listed here which are subject to phased duty reduction includes fruits, tea, spices, tuna, wood, carpets, clothing, tableware, and kitchenware. And examples of products that were excluded or protected under the agreement include frozen animal meats, milk, creams, butter, cheese, honey, rice, sugar, and confectionery, as well as chocolate and biscuits. So in terms of how we are going to interpret Appendix 1, which is what I was just explaining, the schedule of tariff liberalization for CARIFORUM states, as shown in this snapshot here, the first column is the description column, which contains the HS code, the product name, and the duty that the respective CARIFORUM states will apply on the imported product. So this as well too is another snapshot. So as you can see here, some of the countries aren't specified. As you can see, we're not seeing Trinidad and Tobago here, So that would mean the rate of duty applied to the imports would be the line showed in bold. I want to also, as I mentioned, delve into and just provide an overview of our trade with the UK, because this would help us to better understand the use of the agreement and the untapped potential that may exist. So from table 1, we can see that Trinidad and Tobago has been a net importer from the UK over the period 2016 to 2020. So on average, over this period, Trinidad and Tobago had an average deficit with the UK of 438 million TT dollars, while the deficit for 2020 recorded was $197 million. Now this deficit was mainly attributed to declines in the energy products, such as methanol, diesel oil, and other petroleum oils. Specifically looking at exports, Trinidad and Tobago's exports, and Reagan touched on this a little bit, our exports account for 1% of our total exports to the world. And for the last 5 years, the United Kingdom has consistently fallen within the top 24 export markets for Trinidad and Tobago. And more recently, in 2020, the UK has ranked as Trinidad and Tobago's 11th export market. So you see there's significant room to improve our export performance with the UK, particularly as we are afforded duty-free and quota-free access into the UK under this agreement. Looking a little bit closer at our top non-energy exports to the UK in 2020, I included a table here which shows the list of products, the list of top non-energy products exported and the value that was exported in 2020. The third column shows the ranking of these products. So for example, the first one is aromatic bitters that fell as the sixth non-energy product exported to the UK. And of course, I listed others, which are shandy, rum, aerated waters, toilet paper, chocolate, and other chocolates. With respect to imports, Trinidad and Tobago's imports from the UK account for 2% of our total imports from the world over the last 5 years. The UK has fallen within the top 10 markets for Trinidad and Tobago in terms of imports, and the top non-energy imports from the UK in 2020 included motor vehicles, medicaments, whiskey, machinery parts, books, and chocolates. Just to give an idea of the export potential of Trinidad and Tobago's products in the UK market, we utilize the International Trade Center's Export Potential Map tool. And this tool basically shows the untapped potential of one country's exports in another country's market. So if we were to focus specifically on non-energy products, it can be seen that there is that potential exists for Trinidad and Tobago's sugar confectionery, waters as beverages, paper for household purposes, cartons, boxes, sweet biscuits, insecticides, and chocolates and books. So the areas that are a little bit a darker shade of any particular color, it indicates that we have exhausted our export potential in those areas. And the lighter color areas where you see the 0% or the 33%, that indicates that there is significant potential under these areas here. So for example, sugar confectionery, Trinidad and Tobago utilizes 68%, and you'd see it if you look on the right-hand side of the chart, you'll see sugar confectionery, and there's a 68%. So this indicates that we have used 68% of our export potential, and that would leave us with 32% of untapped potential. So that's just a basic idea of how we're reading the chart. And this is in no way a non-exhaustive list. It provides just an overview of some of the products for which we have potential to export to the UK. So now that you have information on how you can utilize the CARIFORUM UK trading arrangement, I would like to share some information on the avenues through which you can communicate any trade issues you have with the UK. So as I mentioned, this would fall under the institutional provisions that I mentioned earlier on in my presentation. So, because of course we can speak at length on all the duty-free access that we can have with access into the UK market, but of course all of this will be moot if it is we actually have all these difficulties in accessing the market. So in terms of raising issues under the agreement itself, the CARI Forum UK EPA has joint institutions that provide a forum to address the concerns of CARI Forum states. So if there's an issue with respect to the implementation of the agreement, you can send the information in writing to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, or you can also reach out to the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association or your respective business chambers, and these entities in turn will contact the ministry in writing. Once the ministry receives your notification, we will determine what course of action, if nationally, can be taken to address the issue, whether it is communicating with the Customs and Excise Division or TTBS or the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries in the event if the issue is an SPS issue. Now, if the issue cannot be resolved nationally, we can, through the CARI Forum Directorate, request that the matter be communicated directly to the UK, or depending on the nature of the issue, request that it be placed on the agenda of the joint institution set up under the agreement, and that is the CARI Forum UK Trade and Development Committee. This body is a consultative body and is charged with the implementation of the agreement. So following discussions at the CARI Forum UK TDC, if the issue cannot be resolved, the TDC will then report to the CARI Forum UK Joint Council. Now, the Joint Council is the highest body of the agreement, and they are actually charged with the actual implementation of the agreement. And the CARI Forum UK Joint Council will consider the matter and arrive at the decision. Now, most times the decisions taken at the CARI Forum UK Joint Council will involve amendments to the agreement. So these are all the areas that I highlighted here in terms of how your issue can be addressed. If it still cannot be addressed at these specific bodies, if it's not properly ventilated at these specific bodies, there are special committees set up to look at dedicated issues under the agreement. And these are special committees on customs, agriculture and fisheries, and services, just to name a few. And these special committees will discuss the issues at length to determine a resolution. So based on this, you can see there are many mechanisms through which any issue brought up about the agreement, it can be resolved. This brings me to where we can find the agreement. So a copy can be found on the Trinidad and Tobago Gazette as number 200 of 2020, and it can also be found on the SIC website. I included the links here so it can be found easily. With respect to the document on the SICE website, the website actually lists the chronological order of the various sections of the agreement, and it can be downloaded into a separate PDF document, which allows for easier navigation. This brings me to the end of my presentation. I've left my contact information, and I would also be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Nikita. I know trade agreements can be technical sometimes, and I think you really broke that down well for us, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next up, we have Mr. Ian Kelly, who is the CEO of Holland Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Kelly will be presenting on the UK investment climate. So, Mr. Kelly, you can feel free to take it away. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, we're hearing you. Fine, thank you.
Right. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's nice to speak to you over in TNT at the moment. As if I could just kick off by saying the Holland Humber Chamber of Commerce here in the UK, of which I'm the chief executive of, also established the British Caribbean Chamber of Commerce, which a number of my colleagues are on the call today. And I, first of all, just wanted to give you a little bit of background in relation to that. I established the British Caribbean Chamber with an office at the TT Chamber when Hubert Allain was its chief executive some 20 years ago. We brought out a trade mission to Trinidad and a number of the other islands with British Trade Minister Alan Johnson, who went on to become the Home Secretary under Tony Blair. And if you go on our British Caribbean Chamber website, you'll see a nice message from Her Majesty the Queen, who is patron of the British Chambers of Commerce, both in the UK and across the Commonwealth. And in that respect, she wishes all of us in Chambers of Commerce best wishes in rebooting trade following COVID. She herself, as you know, has struggled to get to COVID, to COP26 yesterday and today. But I think it's interesting that COP26 does highlight how Britain is very much open for inward investment. And in my part of the world, Hull and Humber, which is a region attached to Yorkshire, Hull and Humber has a population not dissimilar to Trinidad and Tobago. We have been at the cutting edge of what has been happening on the green energy revolution, as it were. In terms of, as an area, we are in the Humber, one of the dirtiest clusters in Britain and indeed Europe, because of our oil and gas ourselves as a sector and our manufacturing. So we have some structural similarities to TNT, or certainly Trinidad rather than Tobago. And in that regard, I think certainly manufacturing companies, and I noticed TTMA on there, and the Energy Chamber, I presume, as well, parts of the supply chain in Trinidad would doubtless find what we're doing on decarbonising our economy in the Humber as very interesting. And in terms of what we're doing as well, in terms of offshore wind, with Ørsted, the Danish company, running the Hornsea offshore wind project, Siemens Gamesa here in Hull as well, building the huge wind turbines, and also Equinor, SSE, and other major global companies from either the UK or other parts of Europe, looking to work alongside with the British government on developing carbon zero in the energy sector, and becoming best practice from being the dirtiest cluster, I think is an area which would be of significant interest to some of your companies in TT in the supply chain. Not least we as Hull and Humber Chamber are looking at that. We have Drax power station on our board that provides 10% of the UK's electricity to keep the lights on in the north of England. And we're working with the supply chain there on the carbon zero agenda towards carbon capture and storage underground in the Off Sea. And in that regard, the former BP site at Saltend has been very active on that, and as INEOS has taken over from BP at Saltend, they're exploring that too with Drax, Equinor, SSE in relation to carbon capture. So I do think there's activity in our Humber region, which, as I say, is an economy and with a profile not dissimilar to Trinidad, where there may be energy opportunities in the supply chain not least as some of those companies, Ineos, I think, have taken over parts of BP's portfolio in Trinidad, Point Lisa, I think. So there are activities of commonality between our supply chain and yours, which as COP emerges, funding emerges from COP, from the developed nations to those that may be able to access it in the Caribbean, as we all take on various targets in this area, then I think there are opportunities on that area. I think in relation to your colleagues, you've highlighted the UK economy, the fact that we have now, post-Brexit, re-established a different approach to global Britain, as Boris calls it, our Prime Minister. And it's a view shared by our UK patron, Lord Howard of Lipney, who used to be the Conservative leader before Boris and David Cameron. And he comes out with us to market and has done in recent times. Last time we were out there in Trinidad, we went to see Paula May Weeks, and we were there meeting up with the British High Commissioners there. I think the last one was Tim Stew. I haven't yet met Harriet Cross, but sort of the connections there that we have are valuable. And for some of you who may have come across the British Caribbean Chamber, you'll remember perhaps people like Ali Khan, who ran the Hilton Hotel, who was our first chair, Jim Telfer, who replaced him, and our managers out there, Judith Leah Marcham and Tracy Horford. Our current manager is Points Mackenzie. So again, if you look at our British Caribbean Chamber website, you'll see he's there based in Port of Spain. Do feel free to chat to him, and he can cascade messages through to our people in the UK at the Hull office, such as our international trade manager, Lorraine Holt, who'll be able to deal with any shipping and logistics issues, as well as all the customs information, which some of your colleagues highlighted earlier. And then, of course, you can move on to the food and drinks and agri-food sector, where we have a strong expertise in the Humber, which fits in with all the national companies that you highlighted there. And of course, we have done work over in the UK for Angostura, who are patrons of the Chamber from Trinidad, along with others that we have across the Caribbean. So from that point of view, I think there's lots of opportunities for your exporters or your investors. I noticed Finance Minister Imbert highlighting a 5% tax reduction for significant exporters. And from that point of view, if any of your exporters on the line are interested in taking up that government opportunity from the Finance Ministry, I appreciate, for example, you were finding it hard with your budgets in light of what's been happening, COVID, to our economies. But yeah, with the opportunities for a bounce back, depending on how the price of oil and LNG sort of kicks back, then this is a good time for you to look at the UK, not just in London, where you would go with your spices and jerks and peppers, as your colleague pointed, for the diaspora market, but also the chance to perhaps come up to the north of England, look at what our big clusters of carbon emitters are doing, and those big multinational companies that are doing it here may be looking to do it in Trinidad, as I say, in terms of carbon zero, or whatever it is eventually that Keith Rowley and the government decide they are putting in place as part of their commitments to COP26, which was highlighted yesterday. I didn't spot Keith Rowley on the TV, but I did see Mia Motley, and of course she has been highlighting the implications for the Caribbean generally, and the need for commitments from the major developed countries to provide financial support to make this transition across the Caribbean as well. And certainly from that point of view, as I say, I think there are important synergies between our energy industry here in Holland Humber and in Trinidad. And I think there are good options in those areas, as well as the chance to invest, if you're so inclined, in what I think will be a growing and stronger economy once Britain gets over the teething problems of Brexit and identifies a new approach to the Caribbean. Obviously, we're continuing in a sort of post-EPA sort of arrangement, but I think as our budgets and our spending rounds and our restructure of our Foreign and Commonwealth Office and its international aid side of activities and the new approach that we're taking to international trade as well, all comes on stream. I think you'll find that Britain's interest in the Caribbean will strengthen again, and the opportunities for trade and greater interaction will continue and develop. Is that useful to you, Regan, in terms of a summary of the way we see it, both here at the British Caribbean Chamber and the Holland Humber Chamber of Commerce, its sister chamber?
Hi, Dr. Kelly. Yes, thank you. That was very useful. Thanks for the offer of assistance. So in the email we'll be sending out to all the participants, we will be including the contact information for Dr. Kelly and Mr. Mackenzie, right?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for that. All right. So moving along, we will now have Mr. Arnie Milken. I hope I didn't butcher the pronunciation of your name there. So thank you. He'll be speaking to us about logistics and getting to the UK. Okay, you can go ahead. Oh, Arnie, we're not hearing you. No, I'm seeing your mouth moving, but no volume. Is anybody else hearing him?
No, Kanika, I'm not hearing him either.
No. Okay.
No, unfortunately, no.
Oh no. Okay, let's see. Okay, if you select the little up arrow next to your mute button, next to the microphone, you could see what microphone is selected. Maybe you have the wrong one chosen. On the select a microphone. Yes, I think I'm hearing it. Well, you're breaking up a bit. No?
No, you cannot.
Oh, yes, hearing you now. Yes, perfect.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Wonderful. That was exactly the challenge. I had the wrong mic on, so thank you. You were wonderful. That solved the problem. I was panicking away.
Sure.
Well, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It is a delight to be with you again with Export TT. I remember warmly how we did a long week of Incoterms training, and some of the names on this webinar I remember well, from grueling sessions about DAP and DEP, and it is just wonderful that Trinidad and Tobago is out there in the world and is ready to export, to play full part, and we in the UK, of course, welcome that greatly. And any chance we get to improve our trade relationship and our personal relationship with your beautiful island is always on the top of our wish list, so to speak. Now, my role for today is to bring us full circle. You've heard about the research, you've heard about the SPS measures, about the customs measures, you heard about the incredible investment opportunity that the Holland, the Humber, and the whole of the UK offers. And you heard about this feverishly complex trade agreement. the carry form FTA. So I'm going to complete the circle, so to speak, in a presentation of roughly 10 minutes. So let me share my screen, and again, you will get these slides, so no problem. Let me share. Here we are. Let's get the right presentation up. Let's do this presentation. Okay. So I hope you can see my slide deck.
Yes, seeing it.
Thank you. We're gonna complete this day together by looking at one aspect that often gets missed. We are very enthusiastic of getting into the UK and getting us trading, but we must not forget that there are a few stumbling blocks, and I'm sure this was already, and you know this was already partly mentioned before, and also in the context of the CARI Forum FTA, we heard the amount of opportunity that there is, but there are a few things that we need to think about as exporters when we come to the UK and bring our goods. Before I do that, I should introduce myself properly. This is the company that I represent. It's a specialized provider of customs and global trade solutions for the exporting and importing businesses and their partners. We offer a one-stop shop approach, allowing all of their customers to reach global customers faster, cut red tape, de-risk and stay compliant, and of course grow globally. And we do this with this one-stop shop proposition, where we help you get out of your market and into your destination market compliantly, efficiently, and of course effectively. This is me. I have about 15 years of experience in customs and global trade, and then went on to become a customs geek. And that's why I am so interested in this, the customs border. And of course, due to Brexit, as you heard, that's the one thing that we got new that we didn't really want to have, and that is the border that can be a stumbling block if we don't manage it. The good news is, of course, if we manage it well, it's going to go away. It's going to be almost transparent, right? Nothing will stop us trading, but we do want to be mindful that as great and as wonderful the CARI Forum EPA sounds, remember the saying, there is no such thing as a free lunch. And that also means that there is not really a free trade agreement. Yes, I can hear you be very upset now. Yes, the duty rate will come to zero, but there is still administration that you have to do. And part of the truth is also being fair and letting you know that you do need to meet the rules of origin, as was alluded in the agreement, but there is paperwork and so on to think about. Now, the way to make all of this go away is to do this proactively. That means knowing about it, hence I'm here. So there are 5 steps to export. There are many steps to export, but these are the ones I would highlight. I'm not going to talk about the stuff that you guys have talked about already. I'm going to talk about the export conditions, about the trade documents that you need, and the trade documents you need for export and for import. So really practical stuff to make all this theory about the EPA and about how the great regions of the UK work in practice. There are some fundamental export conditions that you need to fulfill, and you probably have already if you're already exporting. They are very basic, such as getting a trader identification number. That's a question of 5 minutes. There are also quite a few customs simplification on the way out of Trinidad and Tobago, but equally there are customs simplification on the way into the UK. And this is a whole different story that requires much more time. But one way to make the border, the customs border, disappear is to look into the simplification. By the way, in the presentation, I have hyperlinked some of the aspects that require further investigation. You can check it out when you get the slides. Just click on it and it will take you to the page. There are also these things about the free trade agreement that I mentioned. So we call this formally claiming preference. There are certificates of origins that you need, and you need to get them well in advance. Actually, you need to get them, but the importer really needs them. It's quite complicated. And of course, nothing will work if your products are restricted. Yes, we can send almost anything, but there are a few things that we can't send, or that we can only send if we have the right authorizations. Please be just mindful of these restrictions and prohibited products. There's no need for you to try if it's prohibited. And yeah, we mentioned import and tariffs and taxes. And we said the duty rate is just going to go down to 0 or is 0 for all our products. And again, that is true. But should you not claim the preferential duties under the CARIFORUM UK FTA, or should you have a weird routing, for example, via the US to the UK or via the EU to the UK, then you might be in a situation where you might not need all the terms of this condition. So equally, if you don't provide the certificate of origin and the various paperwork that it needs, you might not be eligible, despite this product being from Trinidad and Tobago. You just didn't do your homework, in which case there could be tariffs to pay. And if they are paid by the importer. But the importer won't be very happy. So you guys then need to work it out and need to address the issue of import taxes and tariffs beforehand. Because these taxes, if they are due, get levied onto your product and make the product much more expensive. And if you forgot to negotiate your product plus the potential duty rates that are applied, then you might be at a disadvantage. Don't forget that also health and safety and technical requirements, and I think some of that stuff was already mentioned, and that compliance with that also falls to the UK importer. That might be the buyer, that might be the agent, but of course they can't furnish health, safety, and technical information unless you, as the exporter, tell them. In other words, it's a give and take. You guys need to work together, the buyer and the seller, much more than maybe you would need to if this was just a Trinidad to Tobago trade, because there is no internal border. As soon as there is a customs border, we need to speak with each other much more. There are many other issues of importance that I can't go into right now, but one of the things that I can only stress, and you know this because we've gone through it in our training with Export TT, and that's the Incoterms. I see this in a lot of UK-EU trade going quite wrong. People misunderstand what these terms are. They think they can deliver DDP or X works when really they can't. And that can lead to a lot of confusion, can take a lot of time, can require a lot of paperwork, and it's just an unnecessary complication. So sort out the Incoterm, agree them well. And then finally, another tip is, of course, to engage with a freight forwarder or someone who's a professional who can deliver these things, who can transport these things, who can negotiate all the various freight and cargo spaces. Again, this is something that many governments, including the UK, support. There is financial assistance to make you move these internationally. I'm coming to the end of the presentation. I told you it was going to be really quick, but don't forget about the paperwork. There's an export declaration you need to make. That export declaration has a lot of fields. You need to put in a lot of information, and it is not as easy to come by as you may think. I heard the word commodity code. There's a whole debate that we could have about commodity codes, the value, the procedure codes, the likes. And don't forget, linked to the export documentation is a lot of other stuff, like the invoice documents or the transport documents, the packing list, anything you need to prove the tax for the export status, as well as the licenses and certificates. So yes, exporting is great, importing is great, trading, but do set it up the right way, which is why companies like mine exist. So I'll help you do that. And then when the goods finally arrive, again, we need to play the whole dance on the import side to get past the customs border. There are pre-information that we might need to provide. There's a lot of paperwork that the importer needs, and the importer won't have that document unless you provide it. And here is a list of the kind of things that you need to be prepared for if you want to trade successfully internationally. And my recommendation is that you set this up for your company for good, so that you can trade with the USA, but also with Australia, with the world, including the UK, and of course the EU. And that might mean proof of preferential origin, that might mean certificate of origin, that might mean packing list, invoices, certificate, and so on. Sort it out before you get pushed to do it. Here are my top tips, 10 tips, but I will let you read them at your own leisure because I want to be respectful to the time. So you will get a copy of the slides. And then if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Now, the last thing I will say is only assume responsibilities that you are able to fulfill. And that also ties back to the Incoterms, that ties back to all the certificates and the likes that you can, that you need to undertake. So exporting is great, importing is great, trading is the way to go, but we got to play by the rules and we got to know what the rules are. And we're here to help you all the way. Thank you for your attention. I congratulate you to this great and fantastic webinar. And I give it back to Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Anne. I really appreciate you joining us and giving us that great breakdown of everything to do with logistics. I mean, we have so many steps that exporters need to go through. It's not just about finding a buyer, finding a market. There are a lot of steps, and we can walk you through that. All right, thank you so much, Annie. All right, so we have just about 6 minutes left. So I'm gonna invite everybody now. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat and I can refer them to the appropriate speakers. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on the chat. And if anybody wants to speak their question, I mean, you could raise your hand and we could allow you to unmute. Okay, I'm seeing Anthony saying he fully supports his presentation from Ani from his work with the SMEs. It's really important to have. Completely agreed.
Well, I may ask a question if I may be so.
Sure.
I should be the one receiving the question. But what's your experience then, Kanika? Are exporters in Trinidad and Tobago ready? Now, what a loaded question that is. But do they have the paperwork? And maybe also this is a question to the representative of the ministry. Am I dramatizing this? Am I over the top? Is it much easier than I make it out to be? Is it as standard and straightforward, or is it difficult? Are TT exporters ready to take on the world? What's your experience? Can we leverage the trade agreements fully?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. We do have those exporters, the larger ones particularly, who are ready, who have the money really to invest in getting like a consultant to walk them through every step of the process, make sure they have all their certifications, the standards and all that. And then we have the smaller and the medium enterprises, which may not understand everything that they need, but that's like a very big part of our role and our function in providing them with that information and providing them with assistance, financial, technical, otherwise, in getting everything that they need to get abroad.
Exactly. And then I heard there's the Chamber of Commerce for the Caribbean, right? British Chamber of Commerce. What role does the British Caribbean Chamber of Commerce have to help overcome these documentary and compliance hurdles? And then I stop. No more questions.
Okay, sure. So I'm going to ask Mr. Anthony Brand, if you can respond to that question. Let me allow you to unmute, Anthony. All right. Okay, I'm seeing him typing in the chat, but just 1 second.
Hello, good day, yes?
Hi, yes, hi.
Hi, sorry, yes, I was typing at the time. The question?
Yeah, so the question was, what's the role of the British Caribbean Chamber of Commerce in supporting smaller SMEs of TT, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Caribbean region, I guess, with dealing with all the paperwork, not only in the UK, but also in the EU, the certificates of origin, understanding these intrinsic, feverishly complex compliance issues that go with free trade?
Well, with respect to the British Chamber of Commerce, I honestly can't say, because I'm an advisor to the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce Europe. So I think like we're different. I think the BCC, what was mentioned by the gentleman from Hull, I think he mentioned that one. I think that's Mr. Dennison. But with respect to the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce Europe, we have advisors, and like we help to make linkages between exporters from the CARIFORUM region and UK and also Europe. And indeed, like sometimes like when the deal is actually going down and it gets into the paperwork part of things, then we also like look for support as well. We also support SMEs. And I think there it's like very good to have like experts such as yourselves who actually can like help with all the exacting paperwork that needs to be filed.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. All right, any other questions from the participants? If you think of something after, we will be sending the contact info for all of the presenters, so you can feel free to email them directly with the questions. All right, and I'm not seeing anybody. I saw a comment from Mr. Brand in the chat, so I'll just read that. Regarding the hot sauces and condiments, there's demand, but it's important to be innovative. Some Caribbean exporters have expressed that they keep seeing pepper sauce being sent for export and that the market could only absorb so much. So definitely innovation is key. And I mean, at Export TT, we actually have...
Ketchup.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have a research and development facility, which actually offers assistance financially to getting that innovative process on the road. All right, so Caribbean diaspora, I believe I responded to that before, but basically that's persons of Caribbean origin. So you were born in Trinidad, born in Jamaica, and you migrated to UK, to US. That's what we refer to for diaspora. And I think all the other questions were answered. All right, underestimating the potential market. Well, okay, so if we are looking at just, the Caribbean diaspora as persons of origin, obviously they would have created families and then passed along those Caribbean traditions in terms of food and beverages. So yes, it would be a lot higher, but it's of course a little bit more difficult to estimate and to get those figures to share, right? Yes, absolutely. Their friends and general public, absolutely. That's could be a potential market. All right. Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm seeing Adrian Theodore. I will allow you to unmute and you can ask your question.
Hi, good morning. It's a mix of a statement and a question. One of the things that was mentioned before was the fact that some of the larger companies would have the money to enter the market. And that's, of course, something we can't underestimate, the importance of having the funds necessary to execute, right, and to promote your brands and so on. But one of the things that I've found is that the potential and size of the market is something that is really underestimated a lot by potential exporters. So therefore, the simple hurdles that they would have to overcome to access a market of tens of millions of people and with such a high GDP per capita is really kind of lost on them. And sometimes it's kind of frustrating to hear people say, oh, I have to do this, I have to get this extra piece of paperwork, without understanding this isn't getting into a supermarket in your domestic market. This is a massive, massive market. And so I think that getting a clear understanding of the potential in the market, linking that to creating a sense of agency in your own organization, and having specific plans, to me, is one of the major things that I think larger companies do, just because they're more structured and they have responsibilities and reporting to boards and whatever, that a lot of small companies do not do, to be quite honest. And one of the things to notice, to note as well, my experience is, some companies, some countries, especially the developed countries such as the UK, they do obviously have more sanitary and phytosanitary requirements. They have more paperwork requirements, etc. But the nice thing is they tend to be very stable and they tend to be interpreted more or less the same by whoever is on duty at the customs office that day. And a lot of the smaller countries, they may seem to have a lot less in terms of paperwork and what you call it, specificity. But that causes another problem, which is whoever is the senior customs officer on duty that day interprets it differently based on how they feel to interpret it that day. Or there may have been a recent budget and they think the budget requirements are in place, but they're not sure, etc., etc. So I think that there's a benefit with specificity that we don't always see. We see all this paperwork and it looks scary, but it actually is better because you know what you're going to get. If you export a pallet versus you export a 40-foot container, you know how your product is going to be treated. And that way, you could do the planning in terms of what your cost, what your landed cost will look like, etc. So I just want to kind of mention those two subjects. I thank Anya a lot for this presentation. It was very, very useful.
Right. Thank you so much for that comments. Absolutely agreed with all of that stuff you said. All right. So I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Going past the Caribbean diaspora. Yes. So the easiest thing would be the Caribbean diaspora, because of course they're familiar with their product. They miss it, they miss home, and it's just going to sell better there. So generally, the track that we would advise would be to go through the diaspora, get established, and then they're going to start recommending you to their friends and to their family. And then you're going to get past that and then expand, right? But of course, being innovative is going to get you places, definitely. All right, think bigger, not niche, be brave. Absolutely, thank you for that. All right, so I think we've come to an end of this presentation right now. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you to the Export TT staff. Thank you to all the presenters who were kind enough to give us their time for this event. Really appreciate it. And as I said, all presentations will be sent after. We will also be sending a recording, so you can feel free to review anything that you might have missed. You can always go back to it. Feel free to send us any questions that you might have. We also have a very brief questionnaire we will be including in that email. I know you might be a little tired of questionnaires, but the feedback is really important for us going forward for any events that we have in the future. All right, so thank you all so much, and have a great holiday tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks everyone, happy holiday. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.